All right, so Mr. Larpseidon, we're back. Been a while since we spoke properly and caught up. You've like pivoted a few times. You've done quite a few cool things. So I thought I'd get you on to like catch up and just see what you've been up to, and I'll obviously speak a bit more specifically about perps.fun. That is, I guess, the current focus. How you been? What's new? How's it been going? Getting that out recently?
Yeah, been well. You know, very happy that we made this recent deal with Kinetic, and that it's public now, and look forward to going live in the next couple of weeks.
And I guess for people who aren't aware of what perps.fun is, how would you describe it to them? Just give them a bit of an overview.
Yeah, TLDR is the first launchpad for perps on Hyperliquid, so anybody can launch and own a perp, 45% to be specific.
And like, how does so for people who don't know, in order to launch a Hip3 market, you need 500,000 hype, which at current prices is something like 35 million or something like that. Quite a lot of money,
More or less.
more or less, depending on the price of hype on any given day. And given that most people don't have that kind of money, the current people that do, obviously, Trade XYZ, Kinetic, some others, right? And so Kinetic released something called Launch, which lets other people launch their own Hip3 markets basically through them via like a shared like delegate of that staked hype. And you guys are basically one of the first platforms to use that to be almost like a launch pad on top of a launch pad. Um,
Almost. Uh, So they did roll out Kinetic Launch, but that's essentially for spinning up your own custom LST and raising a subsequent 500,000 hype. So it's isolated from their existing market. But we partnered up with them to become the exclusive co-deployer on their existing market. So our markets will go live directly on the KM market. It's transitioning to a different name in the coming weeks, but uh, in any case, our markets will be alongside theirs on the Kinetic exchange.
and with regards to how the raise actually works, um, what's the differentiation between the person that proposes the market that they want to create? Given that I saw just from reading a bit that you guys it's not fully permissionless. You're checking the teams that want to launch. You're curating it slightly. What does it look like to be a creator, and what's the difference between being a creator and just someone who's wants to fund it for a share of the fees?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, with a perps market, right, there's a lot more upstream dependencies than something like a spot market, like you would see on Pump Fun. We like to say we're Pump Fun in a suit. There's certain criteria we need to qualify first, such as the team, the logic of the market, is the data sound, um, does it all make sense from a financial engineering standpoint? Is there sufficient liquidity going into launch, et cetera, et cetera? So there is a permissioned element, yes. Um, but the difference would be uh, some teams, there's kind of two categories. Some teams come to us and they have the resources and whatnot. They're already pretty established, whether that's because they're already a market maker, maybe they are a brand with existing distribution and notoriety, so on and so forth, and they have some treasury to be able to go out and buy tickers and stuff like that themselves, or facilitate market making deals. The other category would be people with ideas, or a really lean startup that does need help on the capital front for raising funds to purchase a ticker, which roughly speaking is about 30K a pop, and maybe seed initial liquidity. So that's where the app kind of comes in, and it helps the capital slash market formation go 0 to 1. So the people who participate in that crowd fund will get a pro rata share of the fees.
And the fees are like charged on top of the, I guess, like traditional Hyperliquid fees and Kinetic fees, or what's the split between you guys and Kinetic in the first place?
Yeah. So The fees are baked into the Hyperliquid protocol, right? So it's the same for every HIP3 deployer. There is a lever there. You are able to change the fees a bit for some markets, right? Like, many of the markets today on Hyperliquid are quote unquote growth mode, so they're really low fee. There's some rules around like crypto markets, for example. You're unable to enable growth mode because that would technically mean you're able to compete with the foundation themselves. But in any case, the fee mechanism is set by Hyperliquid. Um, and then the fee split, 45% goes to the sub deployer, assuming they, funded everything themselves. But if they do have crowd funds, it would be that 45% would be split pro rata. 20% goes to the kinetic side of things, so 10% to the stakers, and then 10% towards KNTQ buybacks, and then 25% to us.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And what's the actual typical amounts that people are raising for these sub deployer Hip3 markets? What does it
Yeah.
take? How much money do you need?
We're projecting somewhere in the realm of 200K ish. Could be less, could be more. Really just depends on what outcome you're optimizing for. Obviously, the more you raise, the more OI and depth you'll have on the book day one, and vice versa. The one constant in the equation is the ticker is more or less always about 30K. So anything above that would go towards liquidity. And the sub deployer is able to uh, adjust those parameters to an extent, right? Like we don't want a market to go live with like zero liquidity, but we would adjust the open interest caps accordingly. So there's no risk of things like getting out of hand.
And so the money that's being raised, part of it is, as you said, like 30K or whatever is going to get the ticker for that market. And the rest is what, mainly for market maker and liquidity type things, or is there any other expenses?
That's it. Yeah, it would be a tread vault in most cases.
How does that work when you say a tread vault? Like they're just automatically market making it via tread, or
Yeah, it's like a passive market making LP vault, basically.
and what are the I see that obviously from you guys like curating who's actually going to come through this. What is there in terms of the risk side of things? Because like you guys outlined that obviously there's like risk management for you guys to do and stuff like that. What does that actually kind of involve?
Yeah, it's very case by case, but let's assume that there's no team risk in the sense that like there's no, you know, outright malicious intent. Um, the risk mostly centers around the derivative itself, um, and what the underlying is. So, where does the data come from? How is it computed? Is there any kind of off market hours or any potential attack vectors from the source of data? How do we mitigate those? How do we protect against, like stale quotes causing some sort of, liquidation event, something like that? Uh, yeah.
And I guess maybe are there any examples of some of these long tail markets? Obviously, I know that none of them are live yet, but any that are you can share in the works, or ones that you would like to see people apply to do or something like that?
Yeah. We can't share any specific tickers yet, but I can give like high level categories. They include stuff like niche and emerging equities, some volatility products, collectibles, macro data, um, some really obscure indexes people have put together. It's, yeah, very wide ranging. It should be interesting.
What are the main challenges in terms of getting the oracles for these things? Because I saw that you guys are working with Seda, who does a lot of like oracle based stuff for both Polymarket and Hyperliquid as well, right? Do you have to kind of go to them once someone comes to you with something they want to have a market of, or does the person who wants to create a market have to come with you with some of that oracle information in the first place?
Um, Yeah, so we work really closely with Seda. In most cases, people, when they come to us, they don't have any Oracle infrastructure kind of planned or outlined. That's something we do amongst the three of us.
And like, I guess like, are there any like challenges there? Because like in the past, we saw obviously with things like Trove, people were, I guess, skeptical around how accurate like oracles were. Like, I'm not trying to pin you guys in the same basket at all, but um, what's how do you kind of like actually make sure you have a good like product
Yeah,
on that side as well?
it's a no, it's a great question, and yes, there's been many such cases of, I don't know, suboptimal designs. Um, yeah, one of our teammates, Justin, he was a former trader from Jump, and before that DRW. So he's our quant and head of risk. So that's his full time job, is just doing due diligence and design on these oracles and assessing every which way something may go wrong, and then kind of coordinating that between the sub deployer and SATA, to actually curate the program.
Hell yeah! And you guys have pivoted now like a few times, obviously to perps.fun from when I first met you a couple of years back, you were doing Smiley, right, which is like all options, Arbitrum stuff, and then you guys started building out Aura as kind of a
Yeah.
everything app. What I guess triggered you guys to you know put less focus into that and decide to pivot into this?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, we started building Aura around this time last year. Um, Around, gosh, it was, I don't know, September, October, HIP 3 was announced. Um, it was also around the same time AI had gotten good enough from the coding perspective that all of a sudden you look around and there's 100, competitors out there. And HIP 3 seemed very novel and interesting. And we kind of started down the path of like, oh, maybe we'll do both. This kind of rounds out the whole business model, similar to what Dream Cash did, right? Um, we quickly identified a few core issues, and one being the 500K. That's a big one. 500K hype. Second being financial engineering. So there's a lot of financial engineering involved that most teams aren't equipped for. And then lastly, liquidity. And there was dozens of other teams that we noticed had, one or two of the buckets solved, but very few, all three. And yeah, that's kind of just when it hit us that, something like perps.fun needed to exist. And it was frankly, day by day, month by month, it just became more and more compelling and appealing of a business, than the terminal side of things. So at some point, we were like, okay, why are we spending all this money on operating both? Like, let's just double down on this. And yeah, we had planned to use Kinetic Launch for quite some time, when we first met with the team back in like December, January, but kind of uh, turned out for the best that the original timelines weren't met and Kinetic Launch came much later, kind of after this whole Overton window lapsed of the emergence and then subsequent the exit of many HIP 3 dexes out there. And so it kind of made the obvious opportunity of actually just teaming up instead, and now we're able to provide additional value to their existing stakers.
I think it's pretty funny as well that you initially with the Smiley stuff was on Arbitrum, and we obviously kind of saw the death of like the traditional what it was back then in terms of the Arbitrum season when we used to see a bunch of cool shit on chain like sending all the time and people were writing DeFi thread articles and all this kind of stuff. But like now that you guys are doing things on Hyperliquid, Hyperliquid still being actually somewhat kind of like built very adjacent to Arbitrum. Do you feel like anything key that you learned or helped you like as a builder to build this out now moving into the perp side of things from options?
Yeah, I mean, broadly on the financial engineering side of things and market structure, for sure. Um, but I think from like a business perspective, the game has changed so much since back then till now. Like back then was still the, you know, PhD white paper, launch a token with zero revenue era. So a lot has changed since. But in terms of just general product and operating in derivatives, yeah, it was very helpful for sure.
What do you think after spending a pretty decent amount of time probably trying to build out Aura and then seeing guys like FOMO be very successful right now? Like what do you think like the main difference is, or like why some of these apps have been able to somewhat seem like they've broken out and raised, like recently FOMO raised like a 75 mil round. After spending that time, how do you feel about seeing some of that stuff take off?
Yeah, I think the best thing they did was pick a niche and stay focused on it. That niche being social, and then also Solana, to a large part, right? Like I thought they would have came to Hyperliquid sooner than they did, but they kind of found something that worked. They compounded little wins there for as long as they could, and then you look back and you've built this kind of like behemoth where I think us and many others, we we started building for like this kind of end state from like too early, trying to support all these different products and become like maybe take the everything approach too literally. Um, and when you do that, quality kind of drops off. It's really hard to focus on one user and that compound into two users, into four, into eight. Um, so yeah, like hats off to them.
Yeah, it's actually like something that stuck out to me when I interviewed, say, the one of the co-founders of FOMO. Is he said, um, if you're the everything app, then you're also the nothing app, basically.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah,
damn,
yeah,
when he
it's
said it,
true.
I was like, damn, he's actually kind of right, like, and I think it's pretty difficult as a competing terminal trading app, whatever nowadays, because yeah, like you have like all these existing things that just like it just feels like it's becoming ever more competitive in a market that at least probably now and for the next couple months seems to also be like ever shrinking, right? Um, Obviously, I'm sure we're gonna get another bull market. Like, I'm not really worried about that, but just in this like current state, it's like what features do you add? How do you, on what level do you compete? And I think like what they did well was, yeah, like sort of pushing trading in a certain direction, and you know people being receptive to that in the current conditions and things. It's pretty cool,
Yeah,
I guess, to see.
it feels pretty refreshing to have this reset of focus, like just on perps and a handful of markets, at least to begin with, right? And the whole focus being identify good teams, get those markets live, build up OI, um, and it not be so scattered. I'm sure that will change as HIP 4, HIP 5, and so forth kind of rolls out and expands and so forth. We'll look to carry the same kind of uh, like modular model, if you will, where third parties can kind of like launch and own markets. But at least for now, it's really refreshing just to focus on like yeah, it being so narrow.
Any other alpha within the Hyperliquid eco, or are you paying attention to HIP4 very much, or just any? It could be Hyperliquid, non-Hyperliquid, perps.fun or not. Like any other interesting stuff that you've been kind of looking into and maybe want to speak about.
Gosh, I mean, I've just been trading a lot of equity perps lately.
Nice.
Um,
Such
yeah,
as
those have
what?
been fun.
What have you been
Oh,
trading?
a lot of memory stuff. The whole AI trade has been fun, super volatile. Yesterday
Yeah,
was,
you bro. Yesterday was
yes,
crazy.
yesterday was a cinema.
Yeah,
I was, I caught that, luckily,
nice. W's.
but that was a sweat. Like that was the biggest sweat I've had in a little while.
How did you what put you in a position to be, I guess, like monitoring that and cause you to want to be long into the earnings? Which I'm assuming that's what you were,
Um,
right? If you said you caught it, that's
yeah,
probably what you did.
yeah. I was long into the earnings. Um, yeah, I mean, it's first of all, it's a pretty messy trade. Like, there's a lot of moving inputs for this whole AI trade, and and it was so divisive. Like, just my timeline was flooded with like 50% FUD, 50% bullish delusion. But everybody seemed to agree that it was going to beat and beat pretty hard, like a double beat on earnings. And I just kind of waited for that volatility to occur on that day, and actually the subsequent 2 days, and I got a pretty decent entry and a tight stop, and just cross my fingers. I could have seen it going either way, but I felt like if there was a double beat, everything had been battered so hard the last 2 days that I don't know. It just if if it sold off another 10-20%, it would have dragged the whole market with it, and yeah, I just took a shot.
How do you kind of look at then taking profits, given it ran from 1,000 to 1,250 in the space of pretty much like
Yeah.
a few hours?
Well, so I did take profits on that trade because it was, I'm here in the European time zone, and it was almost 12 for
Yeah,
me,
so
and I
yeah,
was
that's
like, okay, if I keep this on, I'm like not going to sleep tonight. So um, for the sake of my cortisol, I better cut this. So I did. Um, but yeah, the remainder of this, like this whole cycle, will be interesting. The bulls think there's still another 100% in Micron. Um, we'll see if the pricing persists.
any other hip 3 markets that you've been like looking at? Because I think that's obviously like for us crypto people, the hip 3 is very much the doorway into trading all of this stock stuff, right? Like maybe you're different, but like personally myself, I don't consider myself to be an equities quant in any kind of way, right? It's only because of
Mhm.
this because of hip 3 that I've been able to notice what's trending and trade because of it. And I feel like it's actually quite tailored to us as crypto traders because we're used to trading these narratives and heavy like rotational stuff. But yeah, what's your kind of experience
Yeah,
with that?
100%. Like I feel like we're in a narrative, an attention-driven world now. Like we've been saying it for a long time, but I think it's true, and I think crypto traders are like really well positioned to take advantage. But I mean, I used to trade equities like as a kid before crypto, and then yeah, now since then I've been fully allocated to crypto, so I don't have money in a brokerage account. So Hip3 is also kind of my door back to equities, which is nice, and I'm just waiting for more and more and more stuff to be listed versus actually moving money to a brokerage account. But but in terms of other things that I've been trading, I was short oil. I closed it yesterday. But after the MOU was signed, I went short. I had been kind of waiting to do it for a little while. Uh, there is this quote that Flood said, and he was like, "Why would you long something the whole world is incentivized to go down?" So I had long felt that it was a matter of time. I mean, I'm here. I'm here in Russia, and the ruble has way outperformed the dollar since the war started, because they're pretty oil rich and not constrained by Hormuz. So I just felt it so personally, like my life getting 10% more expensive because I have to pay rent and everything in rubles. So this was like a bit of a personal payback. So it felt good.
How does the crypto side of things feel like in Russia? Like how well set up is it over there for it? Not at all. Does anyone speak about it? Where does Russia stand on crypto from your perspective being there?
So I think officially it's kind of like barred, but it's pretty interesting. I tell my friends this all the time, but I live in an area called Moscow City. It's kind of like the business center, high rises, and there's a number of offices here that do P2P, so you can send them any amount of fiat and they will give it to you in cash at favorable rates. So it's like positive slippage because there's more demand in the other direction. So, for example, if you give like exchange $1,000, you get, I don't know, 1,050, 1,100 worth of rubles. which is pretty insane. I've never seen anything like that
Because they can't
anywhere
get
else in
it
the world.
themselves easily over there.
Exactly, because
That's
they're in a
crazy.
closed system.
That's so
They're
crazy.
sanctioned from the rest of the world. They're a closed system, so that's the only way out, more or less. Well, one of the common ways, at least. So there's very few people like taking foreign dollars in, so they'll pay a premium for mine.
That's actually pretty fucking cool. I mean, I remember there are some areas of Thailand, for example, where there's like heavy Russian communities. For example, in Phuket, right? There's an area called Bang Tao, which has a bunch of like Russian investment money pouring into property, and like you can just see it everywhere you go. You know what I mean? Like signs are in Russian. You can speak to people. Everyone's Russian. The gyms are run by Russians. Like everything, right? um, and they have quite a lot of these like crypto P2P little like office things where you can go and do exactly what you said. And like I would imagine it's kind of a similar thing, given that like some of these Russians are maybe struggling with various KYC aspects of all of this kind of shit and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, everybody knows how to use it to some degree here. Like, doesn't matter, the what demographic you fit in. Like, whether you're a trader, like some random girl, everybody knows to some degree. It's interesting.
and you spend a lot of time in Bali as well, where there's a lot of Russians as well, right? Um,
Yeah.
and what's like given you're in Russia, like you still feel like people are trying to emigrate out quite a lot, or it's sort of settling down slightly.
No, not really. Like, um, everyone's pretty content here. There's some people who just have had like, I don't know, lifelong ambitions to move to the US or something for a career, but it's not due to like anything, that's happening at the moment or something like that. It's just more of this lifelong ambition.
Do you see yourself going back to the US at all, or
I don't think so.
you're locking in the European lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to visit every year, but I think just living there full time, but having an online job and so on and so forth, it just doesn't make sense to have that cost of living plus tax. It's just ridiculous. Rather compound from afar.
Yeah, and I completely get that. Um, Hell yeah. I mean, it's been awesome to have you on. If there's any other things you want to talk about, feel free. If you want to share your thoughts on current market, for example, I mean, Bitcoin seems to be live nuking again right in front
Yeah,
of us as we speak, dropping under
yeah.
60K again.
I got filled slightly on a short, not as much as I wanted, but yeah, dude, I think one of these instruments from Sailor, I think, has got to go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Stretch was getting absolutely nuked on, unfortunately. Um, the
Yeah.
STRC, right?
What, what do you think creates the bottom?
What do I think creates the bottom? I don't know if it's necessarily a specific event as much as it is just a general kind of like just total like capitulation.
Time.
Personally, like I've been feeling like for quite a long time that Bitcoin was gonna go down towards somewhere between like 40 and 50K. I don't think that's unreasonable or unlikely at all at this rate. Like I've long felt like we're gonna have another solid leg down, and I think that if you look as a kind of just pattern on like every other breakdown range that we've had, this doesn't exactly look like a region of strength that is gonna form a solid bottom. Like most likely we're gonna the fact that we've basically like went down to 60K to begin with, bounced to 67, and like now we've just like come all the way back down, to me just indicates we're gonna break down further again. Like I feel like shorting here is honestly not that bad RR in the grand scheme of things. Um, and given as well that, yeah, tech stocks might continue to run, but eventually, like given that and the S&P have all been on kind of a tear as of late, when those have a pullback, it's hardly going to be good for crypto. And
Yeah.
that's probably likely going to be sometime in the next few months, right? Like it's going to be at some point over summer when everyone kind of like logs off, everyone's, not really working as hard, everyone's taking some time off from the markets, and then, you know, that's maybe when we're going to see the the people that have been like holding up the tech stocks start to kind of
Yeah.
fizzle out.
I've been like trimming, like I've been kind of in and out of this portfolio structure, but long tech, short crypto has been a pretty,
Spectacular.
yeah, sleep adjusted portfolio.
Sleep
Because,
adjusted.
like you said, I mean, tech down, Bitcoin, like crypto down more. Tech up, crypto, I don't know, flat, maybe even down. Um, so yeah, I think I'll continue to do that at least for now.
How do you structure your like personal portfolio for these kind of times? Like, are you doing this all on hyperliquid when you say long stocks, short crypto, or something else?
Yeah, yeah, all on Hyperliquid. I mean, a little bit on variational, just because there's some points to be farmed. But majority, the primary book that I manage is on Hyperliquid. Yeah,
How did you meet a lot of your team, like the current guys you are building pubs with? Because you've been working with them for a long time, right? Most of them.
yeah. So Giorgio, my co-founder, I've been working with him for like 6 years. We had a growth agency together when we first started off, and that was kind of like our first step into crypto and a great learning experience because we got to work with a handful of different founders and quite a array of products. And then that's eventually we joined the Smiley team on the founding team because we were like we'd kind of, I don't know, progressed to a point where we weren't really learning anymore, and the business became like, oh, an incremental like 5K, in monthly revenue or whatever. But we wanted to build equity, so we joined Smiley. That ended up in like an acquihire from another L1, and then the other team members. Um, Lithale, he's our CTO. He was introduced by a former team member from Smiley, and then Justin that's a pretty funny story. He's the quant from Jump. Um, I was at ETH Milan. Giorgio organizes that. I was sitting outside, and this guy with a beard comes up to me, and he's like, "Hey, have you been to Bali before?" And I was like, "Yeah, I live there." And he was like, "No way! I think I saw you outside of Revolver a few months ago." So he said he saw me sitting at Revolver, recognized my face, and said hi, and we became friends. And then around the time we wanted to jump into Hip3 and pivot to perps.fun, I was like, oh, I know exactly who to call.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
The whole world centers over there, I guess. There's a lot of crypto
yeah.
people out there nowadays, especially just like
I mean,
super built
everybody,
for digital nomads.
yeah, 100%. Everybody passes through at some point, right?
Yeah, I'll probably be heading back out there sometime later this year after I enjoy a bit of Euro summer. But we'll see.
Bullish.
Exactly. But yeah, thanks for coming on. I'll let you kind of get on with the rest of your day and work on building the future of perps.fun. But this has been cool.
Cheers, bro. It's been great. Thanks for having me.